Gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the show. Thank you so much for watching Smart 24 TV, and we do drive your business. This is the #1 station in as far as business is concerned here in East Africa and of course here in Uganda. And this is a show where we bring you of course latest updates from the financial markets globally, regionally, as well as domestically here in Uganda. You can catch the show every morning at exactly 10 a.m. My name is Anthony and I am your host. Now, let's get to, of course, to look into the markets. But also, before we get into that, Altex East Africa is reminding you that you can buy treasury bonds across East Africa on the best interest rates. Now, with a simple dial of *292#, you can be able to buy treasury bonds now across East Africa using your mobile money, be it MTN or Airtel. Now, you can transfer funds off of your mobile money wallet onto the Altex East Africa platform, where you can be able to purchase treasury bonds on the biggest interest rates across East Africa. Now, these bonds, of course, do vary depending on the maturity periods. The interest rates do vary, but this is entirely a secondary market activity. And here we are, of course, getting around the intermediaries that have been a hurdle to many investors in the past. So Altex East Africa is saying you can do away with all those intermediaries and do your investment yourself. They also have an exchange traded fund where you can be able to buy a couple of instruments, a couple of treasury bonds with a single fund. So you, for example, invest in an exchange traded fund where you are buying bonds in East Africa at the same time, from Tanzania, from Kenya, from Uganda, but with the same amount of money, and they split it out for you there. And of course, you get the return from all those investments coming back to you as an investor. You can start with as little as 15,000 Ugandan shillings to trade with Altex East Africa. Remember, Altex is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority of Uganda. Markets open at 15 minutes past 8 a.m. and they do close at 15 minutes past 3 p.m. East African Standard Time. Now, of course, it was a very hectic day yesterday across the markets, especially here in East Africa and the rest of Africa. Unfortunately, most of the stock exchanges lost on their biggest indices, of course, showing a little decline in performance comparing the markets with Monday. Now, getting to look at just a little bit across Africa, Johannesburg Stock Exchange was one of the stock exchanges that gained slightly with a smaller margin, of course, compared to Monday tradings. They had about 17.06 points added to their benchmark index, the J203, and this was about 0.02% that was added on their benchmark index value there. We did have as well Ghana Stock Exchange depreciate at 2.59 points and down to 0.11%. The Nigerian Stock Exchange as well declined with a total of about 1%, and with the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange appreciating at about 25.97 points. Back here in East Africa as well, Uganda Securities Exchange registered a decline in performance in regards to their benchmark index, the All Share Index, which tracks the aggregate performance of all the listed stocks on the exchange. Now, currently looking at the data from the exchange, we had about close to 4 listed equities participate in trading. By the way, via participation, it was a pretty much better day than Monday. We did have more participants this time round, and to be specific here, we had MTN Uganda, we had Stanbic Bank, Uganda Clays, and Wumeme amongst those participants on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Unfortunately, the day ended with just a single gainer and over about 7 losers on the market. The only gainer was Centum Investments, and he gained slightly by just about 0.31%, up to 247.29 Ugandan shillings closing price. Remember, Centum last year lost value from over 444 shillings to an average of about 250 shillings at the close of 2022, which was one of the biggest year-to-date losses we did experience on the Uganda Stock Exchange. And currently in the year 2023, things haven't been easy as well for Centum, but just yesterday they added about 0.31% on their stock price, up to 247.29 Ugandan shillings. On the losing side, where we had most of the stocks here, especially the cross listings, they did depreciate most on the day, and actually there were only cross listings that depreciated in price, with Jubilee Holdings Limited at the bottom of the table with 1.8% decline in the day, down to 5,805.08 Ugandan shillings per share. East African Breweries Limited had about 1.05% decline, down to 4,984.23 Ugandan shillings. And looking across as well to Nation Media Group, they had a 0.78% depreciation, down to 479.20 Ugandan shillings per share. KCB Group lost 0.17%, down to 1,135.87 Ugandan shillings per share. And Equity Group Holdings also had a loss of 0.17%, down to 1,360.68 Ugandan shillings. Kenya Airways lost close to 0.17% as well, down to 113.29 Ugandan shillings. Most of them, of course, moved by the same percentage, because like I explained before on the show, most of these cross listings, their prices are influenced by several other factors outside just the demand and supply, and these mainly do move their stock prices more often than the other factor of demand and supply. And this could be one, of course, being the shilling. The shilling depreciates at times, and the prices have to agree at some point with the ones on the primary stock exchange. So in case they didn't change on the exchange that side in Kenya, and then we have maybe the Ugandan shillings growing stronger than the Kenyan shillings, that impacts on their stock price here as well. So sometimes these are some of the movements you're seeing, not trading, but the movements happen due to some of those outside factors as well. This is particularly for the cross listings here in Uganda. Now, on aggregate, the participants did move the markets with a very huge volume, and via this data, comparing the data of trading for yesterday to the one of Monday, there was a 231% improvement in the volumes that were recorded. Now, the current market capitalization also remained at 20.8 trillion Ugandan shillings. Now, MTN, as I said, mentioned, of course, at the beginning of the show, they did trade the biggest volume with close to 950,600 shares that were traded on the currently the newest listing on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Now, MTN Uganda currently has a total of close to 4.03 trillion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization. This is the total value of the over 22.4 billion shares that are currently floated on the Uganda Stock Exchange main board. Now, the company has about 19.4% of the entire exchange, which makes it the second most valuable currently, coming behind just Equity Bank Limited. Yesterday, their stock price was untouched, remaining at 180.0 Ugandan shillings. MTN seems to be stagnant this year so far, since the beginning of the year, and close also into December. When you get into December, their stock price has been stagnant at 180 shillings. But we are getting into of course, the closing the year, the financial year. So we hope, of course, things do change positively, of course, especially for the investors there at the company that came on board as an electronic IPO, the entirely electronic IPO that we had at MTN, that is last year but one. We did have, of course, many new subscribers, especially people who are new to the stock exchange, buying shares for the first time, and the millennials as well. But disappointingly, the stock hasn't picked up since their initial public offer, which came at 200 shillings. Now currently at 180.0 shillings per share. Now, getting across to the company's trading. In the last 3 months, MTN has maintained the third position amongst the top traders, and this is a pretty good performance, of course, putting other factors, holding other factors constant. Within this period, since October 24th to the 24th of January, MTN Uganda has about a total volume of about 23.2 million shares, valued at 4.18 billion Ugandan shillings turnover. And also, of course, this is one of the biggest turnovers as well that we've had in the last 3 months of trading. Now, on average, they have been trading close to over 367,881 shares, traded at about 9.89 million. That was achieved on the 3rd of January. That was the biggest share volume there that was traded on. And currently, MTN looks to be getting more and more active, but the price seems to be stagnant, which is a little bit worrying there for the shareholders. But regardless of that, MTN did record the biggest volume and turnover yesterday. The turnover we are talking about here is about 171 million that was transacted on MTN yesterday. Stanbic Bank Uganda came in the second place in terms of trading, and currently Stanbic Bank is the 5th most valuable company on the Uganda Stock Exchange, with a total value of close to about 1.07 trillion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization on the exchange. Now currently this is about 5.16% of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange. Looking at their share price here, they remained stagnant at 21.0 Ugandan shillings per share. The 550,000 shares accrued a total value of close to 11.6 million Ugandan shillings on the exchange. Currently, the company has about 51.2 billion shares that are outstanding there on the Uganda Securities Exchange main board as well. And in the last 3 months, Stanbic continues to be at the top of the table when it comes to trading via the volumes. They have, of course, as well had about 49.7 million shares in the last 3 months, with a total turnover of about 1.12 billion over the period. Before we also leave to Uganda Clays, who was also another big mover there on the market. Remember, Stanbic continues to be one of those companies that maintain a good dividend policy. So if you're out there and you're looking for shares that do return a dividend, definitely Stanbic would be one of those stocks that has consistently provided a dividend for their shareholders, unlike many other financial institutions that are listed. But of course, with the exception of a few, Stanbic Bank has been one of those outstanding companies when it comes to rewarding their shareholders with dividends. Now, Uganda Clays Limited as well came in amongst the top movers for the day. Uganda Clays is one of those companies that really does keep silent for some time, and then once in a while, in 2 weeks, comes back with some good activity, and then goes back into its hiding place. But it's also one of those stable stocks when it comes to pricing. Their price is quite low, but at least stable in that position, with 15.0 Ugandan shillings per share. Currently, also the company has about 13.5 billion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization. Now, this makes it of course, represent close to just about 0.065% of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange, making it the 15th most valuable company on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, when you look at the total traded volume here, we had about 191,616 shares that were traded on the stock exchange via Uganda Clays, and a total turnover of 2.87 million Ugandan shillings. This, of course, currently makes the company one of the most traded on as well, in the 6th position out of the 18 listings on the Uganda Securities Exchange. In the last 3 months, they have had about, 1.13 million shares that have been transacted on the Uganda Stock Exchange. And this makes it about 16.98 million for a company that is trading at 15 shillings. That's quite commendable for Uganda Clays Limited. However, in the last, when you look at their year-to-date performance since the year began, they have lost 12.8%. This is also one of the worst, because they started the year on the 2nd of January at 17.2 Ugandan shillings. So as well, you can put that loss into account as you evaluate Uganda Clay stock. But it continues to be one of those very resilient stocks, and one of the oldest, actually the oldest listings on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Umeme Limited, of course, didn't miss out on the second day of trading. Umeme has also been silent for the last couple of days of trading, about 3 days or so, but returned with a volume of just about 92,700 shares that accrued a total value of 27.8 million shillings. The price was maintained at 300.0 Ugandan shillings, and the market capitalization as well standing currently at 487 billion Ugandan shillings. Remember this year, last year actually, at the close of last year in December, Umeme released a notice, a public notice to their shareholders that they will not be renewing their agreement with the government, which was a concession of about 20 years actually, from 2005. Now that will be expiring in March 30th, on the 30th of March, that is in the year 2025, and they will not be renewing that. And that has been driving the stock market crazy, with many shareholders getting to run to buy themselves some shares at Umeme. Consequently, the company has gained value from close to about 200 shillings in just 1 month to 300 shillings, which is one of the quickest gains we've had on the exchange history, right? In just a period of 1 month. And so a lot of optimism there for the shareholders at MTN, at Umeme rather, Uganda. Now on aggregate, the all share index registered a loss of 3.71, mainly because of the cross listings that lost a lot of value on the market, representing currently a 1-week loss of 0.94%, but monthly gain of 1.18%. So we're still performing pretty well when it comes to the monthly performance. But year to date is also now on the loss of just about 0.19%. The local company index, of course, was maintained at a value of 274.14 points. And that's, of course, because all the cross listings remained intact during the trading. And that's the trading, my friend, from the Uganda Securities Exchange. Let's get to have a look at the Nairobi Securities Exchange and see what transpired on the second day of trading at the exchange. On aggregate, over 50 listings participated in trading, which is pretty commendable for the exchange. And the day ended with 18 gainers and over 24 losers. Unfortunately, EGADS led the gainers at 8.65% gain there. This was at a price of 11.3 Kenyan shillings closing the markets, and this was followed by ABSA New Gold Exchange Traded Fund, which gained close to 8.55%, and the Standard Group at 7.29%. Kapchora Tea Kenya lost most for the day, with a total loss of 9.97%, down to about 3.25 Kenyan shillings per share. NCBA Group as well lost 5.63%, and Flame Tree Group Holdings about 4.76 Safaricom continued to be the biggest mover of the day with 8.08 million shares that were traded on the market. Now, currently, when you look at the benchmark index here, the NSE All Share Index shed close to 0.36 points, and this was down to 125.31 points, representing currently a 1-week gain of close to 3.85%. Via improvement, of course, in the volume, we did have great volume improvement here at 233%. That was registered as an improvement on the volume side, and the turnover as well improved by over 293% comparing with Monday. That's, my friend, the trading from the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and you can also buy yourself shares in Nairobi. We are looking at a common market, a common capital market in East Africa. And one of the things that the capital markets authorities around East Africa are doing is integration of the capital markets of East Africa. And definitely, I'm one of the people looking forward to that, because we actually are, we're supposed to have begun that yesterday, because the capital markets really suffer greatly when it comes to borders and crossing borders, of course, trading across borders because of the various tariffs and the hardships really the investors go through. So if we could have a single market, definitely we could edge out so many of the challenges that are currently being experienced by especially investors that are interested in the region. My friend, that's of course the trading from East Africa and Africa in general. But remember to buy some bonds in East Africa via Altex East Africa. Altex is your #1 private stock exchange, and you can be able to buy it now shares, rather buy the treasury bonds by dialing simply *292#. When you do that, you can be able to transfer funds off of your mobile money or your mobile wallet onto the exchange. Altex East Africa says you can do something new and is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority. Now, great, let's get across over to the US stocks right now. Of course, ahead of big earnings this week and also next week, companies will be, of course, coming out with their earnings data for the year 2022. But the US stocks wilted on Tuesday morning after back-to-back days of gains and losses as investors evaluated another round of quarterly financial results of their companies. The stocks resumed regular trading after dozens of names on the New York Stock Exchange were halted for volatility shortly after the markets opened. Now, the exchange is investigating reported issues with the opening auction yesterday. That's according to the spokesperson of the New York Stock Exchange. The S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average each borrowed down roughly by 0.5% at the opening, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq composite was off by close to 0.4%. Major stocks briefly were affected by the apparent technical issue at the New York Stock Exchange, including the Morgan Stanley, AT&T, McDonald's, and Walmart, as at 9:50 Eastern Time. Thank you so much, my friend, for sparing time and getting, of course, to join us on this financial markets update. And my name is Anthony. Remember, to diversify your portfolio as an investor is to get to reduce the risk that is out there on the market. My name is Anthony Sebale, and I was very glad that you joined me. Catch me tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a good day.
Smart 24, driving business.